Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I'm the Chief Executive of the Department of Trade and Economic Development currently. I've been in that role for almost 18 months. Brought into that role from another government role. I spent about 3.5 years in charge of the state's training system, which was Department of Further Education, Employment, Science and Technology. It wasn't just the state training system, it was a range of areas, but I found that particularly interesting. That was my first stint in government. Prior to that, I helped to manage Port Adelaide Football Club into the AFL competition back in the late 1990s, and then I was Chief Executive of Port Adelaide through its first 8 years of operation. I retired at the end of 2004, which was a premiership year for us, so it was a nice retirement.
Good, okay. From the South Australian perspective, the economic perspective, can you tell us a bit about where the economy is currently at?
We could talk about a lot of things in regard to the economy and where it's currently at. I guess if you reflect back to 12 months ago, it was March 2009, the Economic Development Board, which is not a part of this department, it's a separate board which is independent and contains a whole range of industry people. It prepared an economic statement, a blueprint for the state going forward. The Economic Development Board has done a range of things for the state government over the course of its journey since 2002. This was particularly about, well, where's the economy of the state going and what are the prospects for South Australia for the next 7 to 10 years. So when they released this statement, it was just at the end of the global financial crisis. So there was a whole lot of conjecture about where the world was going and where Australia was going and where South Australia was going. And I think at the time that it was released 12 months ago, the Economic Development Board were really, really positive about the state and where it could be and where it could be positioned. As it's turned out, with the global financial crisis pretty well, we think, gone at this point in time, you'd have to say that Australia probably weathered the global financial crisis better than any other country in the world. And of the states in Australia, probably South Australia weathered the global financial crisis probably better than most other states as well. So South Australia's ended up, after that particular episode, being in a very, very good position going forward.
What would you attribute that to?
I think the federal government stimulus was obviously very important, but the state's been well managed, and particularly well managed in respect of the way that it's tried to diversify its economy. If you go back into the 1960s, South Australia really relied at that time very much on manufacturing. I think it was about 28% of our gross state product at that time. Now, manufacturing's declined over recent years, and currently I think it's only about 12% of our gross state product. But what's happened is you've got burgeoning opportunities in other areas like mining, resources, defence, education, services, and our traditional strengths in agriculture. So all of those things have come to the fore. So what's happened over the course of probably the last 10 years or so is that South Australia's diversified its economy, and in diversifying its economy, it now is in a much stronger position to go forward. It's not just reliant on manufacturing, it's got a whole range of things to look forward to.
I guess talking about manufacturing, tell us a bit about the Tonsley plant.
Well, it's a great opportunity for the state, and of course when Mitsubishi decided that they would move out from the Tonsley site, it was pretty well, people were saying, where's manufacturing going, where's car production going in the state? Clearly, there's massive effects of overseas competition on car manufacturing. But the site itself, now that Mitsubishi have moved out, presents an enormous opportunity for the state in terms of looking at those new developing areas of industry, looking at a manufacturing industry that was generally pretty old manufacturing, and looking at higher level manufacturing and value-adding manufacturing. So the Tonsley site, 62 hectares, is now an opportunity for the state to, particularly for the southern region, to locate a population of people, of employed people in that 62 hectare site in a whole range of diversified areas like renewables and energy, advanced manufacturing, education. It's going to be a precinct like I don't think South Australia has seen before. So it's a fabulous opportunity. And for this, from the state point of view, what we want to see out of it is we want to see it as a strong employment area for the south, because the south needs that. It does, you know, our transport corridors currently are being revamped, and is an opportunity for people in that area to work in that area.
Okay. Do you think that the announcement of the duplication of the South East Expressway is going to help this as well?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. That's a very positive announcement. It's something I think as people have looked at over a long period of time and said, is that the best way to feed the south by a one route development? Well, it's obviously not. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity. The south has got a lot going for it. It's in terms of population growth, it's growing. South Adelaide, I guess, is in a position where it can only really grow north or south. It can't really grow much through the other side of the hills. It probably can grow out towards Murray Bridge, Mount Barker is a big growth area, but certainly north and south there's big growth opportunities. But you've got to feed that with opportunities for people to be employed, to make money.
Brian, taking into consideration current statistics and also projections as well, how would South Australia fare relative to the rest of the country in the future?
I think South Australia, the Economic Development Board suggested 12 months ago South Australia had an enormously bright future, and it's pretty clear now that what they're saying going forward is that South Australia will outperform most of Australia in terms of our growth over the next 7 to 10 years. And that's principally because we've diversified our economy, because we've got massive defence contracts that we're winning way more than our fair share of. I think we're winning on a pro rata basis. We might be 7.5% of the population of Australia, but we're winning about 30% of the defence contracts, and there's significant dollars in all of that. And then we've got our mining resources and the exploitation of those, and out of a mine develops a whole range of other industries as well, support industries. And then we've got our traditional agri-business, etc., which will continue to grow and develop. So South Australia is set to be as good, if not better, than any other state going forward in the next 7 to 10 years, capitalising on the fact that we've diversified our economy, which means that we're going to have a whole lot more people. Population growth is going to be bigger, and I think you will have seen the plan for Greater Adelaide, the 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide, looks to put in context how the government, or how industry and the government together are going to be able to manage that population growth, because we will have significant growth, and we need it. We need the growth to make sure that we've got enough people to work to fill the jobs for all these burgeoning industries that we've got.
Well, Brian, taking all of this into consideration, I mean, where does this leave property investors and also property developers as well? I mean, where do they come into all of this?
It's interesting. I mean, property is a hot topic at the moment, particularly, people in terms of their homes. They obviously have a vested interest in looking at the value of their property, and house prices are rising enormously in South Australia, and Australia for that matter. And my understanding is that Australia is becoming one of the least affordable places to buy a property, to own a house, for example. But that's a result of the fact that we have industry that's growing very, very strongly. We have skills that need to have a very, very high immigration rate as a result. So the more houses that get built, the more houses we need. And I know that there's at the moment, as many houses as they can build, as quickly as they can build them, it's not enough for the way that the population goes forward. Where the private sector fits in, the private sector generates the wealth for the state, and property and property development is all part of that. I just listen and read, but certainly in the next few years it looks like the property sector is a particularly popular sector for investors to work in. The share market hasn't necessarily come out of its lethargy yet. The last 6 months have been particularly flat in the share market, so you expect that people are looking to put their money into better investments. Property is a great opportunity for people, and I think by my reading, in the foreseeable future, that will continue to be.
Well, that's great, Brian. Look, thanks so much for your comments.
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.